talk to your uncle, right? Talk to someone else's dad. The time is nigh. I mean, the time is really nigh. You are gonna have to talk to people that you're not used to talking about. I mean, looking at it from the outside, I mean, right now we have a middle of the road liberal, much like Kathleen Wynne in Quebec, and it is not working out, believe me, but it is better than the anti-immigrant cutbackaholics that you guys, could potentially be dealing with down here.
Yes.
But look out.
So, just to kind of bring it back to that idea of the folks that I was, the whole idea about this is that we're collaborating on a tangential stream of consciousness wronged through our very hard left politics.
I'm here.
Yeah, I know you're here. And I think it's about kind of jumping in on each other and playing off of each other. But so kind of coming back to this idea of working with folks who were experiencing homelessness, marginalization, were living in poverty, were using substances, and it's this idea that we punish people who aren't successful in this kind of very specific capitalist idea of success. And we traumatize people through the systems that actually take power away from them. And then if people use, go to the pharmacy that's on the street corner as opposed to go to the pharmacy to get your Ativan from fucking Village Pharmacy. If you have to get your Ativan on the street corner, then you're punished for it. Or Cape Moss Park. Then you're punished for it, as opposed to folks that go to the Village Pharmacy to get their Ativan to deal with the fact that this world is super fucked up and treats people like garbage. So one of the issues that I think gets brought up in this episode is this idea of who are citizens of value. And how do we see people in our communities as valuable or not valuable? And they kind of bring up these kind of 5 specific social factors or demographic or identity factors in this episode and really try and humanize these characters and by extension try and get us to start thinking about, or get the gen pop kind of audience of the girls to start thinking about their relationship to racism, their relationship to sexism, their relationship to ageism, to substance use and mental health concerns. What I'm interested in is thinking about how that actually fucking applies to us here in Toronto, on Church Street, at Glad Day. And I'm thinking about the folks that I know from my community, people that I sometimes fuck around with, the people who I fuck around with, who are struggling with poverty, struggling with homelessness, are using crystal, are using crack, are on our street, who we think are getting in our way when we're trying to walk down the street and someone's having a mental health crisis at the corner of Church and Wellesley, and we think that that's someone who is obviously straight and doesn't belong in the village.
She told you it was going to be a sermon.
Sorry, it's a fucking sermon. So there are a number of folks that I worked with at the community health center that I used to work for who in the outward world would have to present as straight so that they are not going to get the shit kicked out of them by other people who are street involved or homeless. And then when that comes to how we see those people in our community, we see them as too tough. We see that as a straight identifier, as opposed to people are trying to make themselves safe and they come to the village because this is their community and this is the only place in the city that they feel safe. And how do we, Sophia says, I actually wrote it down for a quote, she's like...
They call it rough trade for a reason.
Yeah, rough sleeping for rough trade. So she said, good people won't let this kind of suffering go on. And I think that that's important for us to think about. We other the far right. We other the people that are doing damage to queer and trans communities. But as good people that we are in this room and in our community, how do we reckon with the suffering that people experience as members of our community that have other intersectional identities that are not working their job on Bay Street, are not working their job at the community health center? How do we reckon with doing right by the people in our community that are suffering the most?
And we do that by recognizing that we are still living in the aftermath of the deinstitutionalization of mental health resources and the massive defunding of mental health resources that started in this very period. I mean, neoliberalism as we know it came from the 1987 stock market crash. any kind of austerity that we might have known before that, all the way back to like the Second World War, paled in comparison to what started right around the time that we were thankfully too young to remember just how hard it was.
So young.
We were still babies.
Such smooth
We didn't
skin.
even know what grad school was.
Touch this skin, honey.
Touch. None of it.
Yeah.
Touch.
Ask
none of
politely.
It. Ask first.
So, but let's be
But
honest.
let's talk
Let's
about
be
the
honest.
mental health thing.
So this is a real thing. We still have agency in this process. And I know that this sounds like fucking the same old garbage, but you know, call your city councilor, call your MP, set up a time to have a conversation about, and say like, these are actually things that are of concern to me. My goal is not to get the person who's making a disturbance at church in Wellesley because they're having a mental health crisis. My goal is not to call the police and shoo them out of the way to get them removed, because where do they go? They're going someplace where they're going to feel less safe, and they're going to come out and they're going to be more upset. What I want is that we have a conversation so we can say, they need something from us. They need safety, they need security, they need services, they need support. I can't give that, you can't give that. We need that to come from our larger community. We're paying fucking taxes not to bomb the shit out of someplace else. We should be paying taxes to pave the roads of mental health fucking resources.
And so let's talk about that. I think, from what I've read, y'all have 3 weeks plus a day. Is that right? Is it 3 weeks?
Was that my
today?
charge?
You have
Sentence?
You have 3 weeks. Yes, you've been sentenced to 3 weeks of roast beef. No, you have 3
Sorry,
weeks.
girls.
You have 3 weeks to make sure. 3 weeks to make sure that you are voting for the person who's going to keep funding the mental health resources and the anti-poverty resources that your community needs. Don't let it go the way of Florida in 1987. Don't let this episode become more of a reality than it already is.
Thanks, girls.